In this explainer, we're going to be diving into a really powerful sermon that asks a huge question for anyone of faith. What is the ultimate goal? I mean, what are we actually trying to achieve here? Let's get into it.
And this quote just nails it, right? It's so easy in any part of life to get so wrapped up in the doing that we completely forget the original why. Forgetting our purpose? Well, that's a universal danger, and it can lead to a really empty and frustrating experience.
Okay, so that brings us right to the big question. If forgetting our aim is so dangerous, then we have to be absolutely crystal clear on what that aim is. What's the bullseye? What's the one thing that all our beliefs and all our actions should be pointing toward?
To answer that, we're first going to define the goal itself, and then we'll take a look at how easily it can get lost, even when we're surrounded by all sorts of religious activity.
And there it is. This is the core idea from the sermon. The goal, it turns out, has two parts. First, to know Christ, not just as some historical figure, but in a real, living, personal relationship. And second, that relationship is actually meant to change us, to transform us from the inside out so we become more like Him.
You know, this carries such a powerful warning. The problem usually isn't a lack of activity. I mean, churches can be incredibly busy places. The real danger is when all that serving and singing and organizing gets disconnected from the main thing, knowing and loving Jesus. It all just becomes motion without any real meaning.
So let's dig into that first part of the goal, knowing Christ. The sermon makes a crucial distinction here, and it's one that makes all the difference between just having a religion and having a real relationship.
This slide breaks it down perfectly. See, you can know about Christ, you can know the facts, the stories, the doctrines, that's all head knowledge. But then there's knowing Christ personally. The sermon used a great analogy. You might know a ton about a famous celebrity, but you don't actually know them until you've had a personal introduction. It's the difference between information and intimacy. And this is so key. Of course, the facts are essential. You have to know who Jesus is and what He did. But salvation isn't just about passing a quiz. It's a personal introduction. It's that moment of surrender, where you shift all your trust from yourself to Him. And that's not the end of the story. It's the very beginning of a lifelong relationship.
So how does this relationship actually grow? Well, the sermon points right to what Jesus Himself said. The path to getting closer to Him isn't some big secret. It comes from engaging with His teachings and actually putting them into practice. So the whole point of studying the Bible isn't just to collect information. It's to foster obedience, which then leads to Him revealing more of Himself to you.
Okay, so let's move on to the second part of the goal. See, knowing Christ isn't a passive thing. The very nature of that relationship is that it transforms you. It changes you.
And this is a really important distinction. Becoming like Christ isn't about just gritting your teeth and trying harder to be a good person. The sermon is super clear on this. It's a process that's empowered by God's Spirit, and it unfolds through three specific, pretty profound experiences that shape who we are. So, what does this path actually look like in real life? The Apostle Paul lays out this exact journey of transformation in his letter to the Philippians. Let's break down what he says. So Paul's deepest desire was to know Christ in these three distinct ways: to experience His resurrection power, to share in His sufferings, and to become like Him in His death. Now I know that might sound a little intense, but the sermon presents these as the very tools that God uses to shape us into the image of His Son. So what does this look like day to day? Well, resurrection power is that divine energy that gives us the strength to overcome sin. The fellowship of sufferings, that means understanding that the hard times in life aren't just random, they're actually used by God to refine us. And conformity to His death, that's the daily choice to say no to our own selfish impulses and yes to what He wants.
Okay, so this brings us to the destination. Where is this whole path of knowing and becoming ultimately leading? And what does it take from us to actually stay on that path?
The sermon points out this fascinating little detail in the original text. The Apostle Paul talks about attaining the resurrection from the dead. Now, scholars debate whether he means living a kind of resurrected life right now, or if he's talking about the future resurrection when Christ returns. But here's the great news. Either way, the destination is exactly the same: being made perfectly like Christ, totally free from sin, forever.
To bring this all home, the sermon uses an absolutely incredible true story to show the kind of faith this journey really requires. It's the story of a man who took an unbelievable risk, all for the hope of freedom.
Get this.
In 1856, an enslaved man named Henry Brown did the unthinkable. He had himself sealed inside a small wooden crate and mailed from Virginia to Philadelphia. For 3 weeks, he was in that box, risking suffocation and discovery, trusting his entire life to strangers and the postal service, all for the hope of being free. And when that box was finally opened, he stood up, cramped and stiff, but he was a free man.
And his first words, they weren't just thank you. He said, I'm entrusting my future to you. Wow, what a powerful picture of the Christian life. It's a risk. It means climbing out of the box of our own comfort and control and entrusting our entire future to Jesus Christ, believing He will deliver us to true freedom.
And that's the final takeaway, isn't it? Why take that kind of risk? Why go down this path of transformation? Because, just like Henry Brown discovered, the destination makes the journey worthwhile. The goal of knowing Christ and becoming like Him is, in the end, worth absolutely everything.